Okay, I think we should be ready to go. Okay. So you were saying you forgot to mention.
Yes, in order to appreciate what I was doing, I think we should start from the beginning with regard to Shea Forward. Our first headquarters for Shea Forward was in Julesville in Normandy. It was a small little village, but it was very convenient for us because it had great communications, and it was a school there which we used as a headquarters. From Julesville, we moved to Versailles. And Versailles was very interesting because we were in what is known as the Petite Écurie and the Grande Écurie, which were the stables for Louis that faced opposite the palace. And we became, it was just almost incredible to go to work there in the morning. But in order to, the British, of course, liked to drink. And so we set up a little storefront right near the palace, and in the evening anybody could go in there from our headquarters and have a drink, or two or three or four or five. and one night, it was about the middle of December 1944, when the door opened and a woman walked in wearing an Eisenhower jacket, long trousers, and a jaunty hat with blonde curls coming out of the side of her hat. And she said, "Gentlemen, I'd like to talk with General Eisenhower." And we all laughed and said, "So would we." So I said, "But if you'll tell us why you want to see General Eisenhower, maybe we can be of help to you. Have a drink." So she said, "Well, my name is Marlene Dietrich, and my friend here is Maurice Chevalier. And Maurice is being unfairly accused of being a collaborator, and I know he was never be a collaborator. And so I want you to tell General Eisenhower that Maurice was not a collaborator, and he was helpful to the Allied cause, what he called it." So we said, okay. We thought he was a collaborator, by the way. So he was. He sang for the German troops and the hospitals and everything else. So we said, "Well, thank you, Ms. Dietrich. We'll see that he gets the message." And she said, "Oh, no, we're not finished. Maurice wants to entertain you." And he took out from his little box, he took out a cane and a straw hat, and he got up in front of all of us, and he sang for about an hour and a half, all the songs that had made him famous, what he called it. So this was really a very interesting part of it. From Versailles, we moved to Reims. And Reims was, of course, the great cathedral city, also the home of champagne. And we used to buy champagne from the growers for 85 cents a bottle. and that's where I got to know Eisenhower's friend, Kay Summersby. And we would drink a bottle of champagne together at the club. Some club. And, but it was a very, very interesting place, Reims, because we used to get to Épernay, and sometimes we'd take us down into the caves underneath, which was so cool and beautiful, what they call it, and all the champagne would be in the bottles there. And they had a man who turned the bottles by hand every day or so, what they call it. They don't do that anymore. They take the whole thing and they turn it upside down, what they call it. So, and to make a bottle of champagne, you have to disgorge a little bit of the top of the I don't know what they call it in France, but it's pieces of grape and stuff. And so they had experts who knew just when to open it up, drop it out, put it back in, and then add some clear champagne into the bottle. And so I got to know a few of the growers there, and it was very, very nice. That was in Reims, and then, of course, the war was drawing to a close, and that's when it was announced that General Jodl was coming to Reims to sign a surrender. But he came to Reims not intending to surrender. He came to Reims with the idea that he could stall us off and tell us that, that he wanted us to treat the population gently and not to be rough with them and things of that sort. But it didn't work out that way, because after a while it became obvious to us that either you sign or you don't. And so he got in touch with Dönitz in Flensburg, and Dönitz said, okay, if you've stored all you can, sign. So he and von Dornberg, the naval admiral, they both signed the surrender. And that was, then we all moved from there. We moved on to Flensburg, Germany, where that's a very strange era then, a few weeks of, Admiral Dönitz had his headquarters, and he had his Minister of Health, a Minister of Armaments, a Minister of Supplies, and he would have meetings every day. He had no power whatsoever, but he'd have meetings every day, and he'd ask for reports from his people. He really felt that he was the Führer's designated representative, and we should treat him gently and nicely.
Was he under arrest at that time?
No. Nobody was under arrest at that time at all.
But they could move freely?
He could move freely. They could all move freely. But they didn't. They were resigned. The war had been lost. And there was no sense causing any more problems than they already had. And so unless you were an really ardent Nazi, there was no purpose in be served. And so we flew into Flensburg, and I remember it was a small 2-engine plane, and we landed at the airport, and I looked out and I said, oh my God, there were about a few thousand German troops, fully armed troops walking around waiting to be transported back to home in Germany. And I got out the airplane and I said to myself, if one of these sons of bitches decides that he doesn't like us, I'm a goner. But no, everything worked out fine. And then we found where we're going to stay. And they say, don't worry, it's all set up. You're going to stay on a beautiful ocean liner called the Patria. It made one trip before the war and been holed up in Flensburg ever since. So we moved the Germans off the boat and we moved on. And it was a entirely different type of life. They brought on a staff of civilians who worked the ship, and they did our laundry, and we'd bring laundry in the morning, and they'd come back all pressed and clean in the evening. It was just a different type of life. And then about 4 or 5 days later, the Russians arrived. And so the Russians came, and they got cabins just the way we did, and then we would have 3 meals a day with them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we got to know them pretty well. And they were highly intelligent officers. They were intelligent officers for one thing. Most of them spoke some German. So I would sit down after dinner one night, have a drink with a few of them and say, you guys read any American books? Oh, What books do you read? We read Upton Sinclair, The Jungle, Oil. And the other one we love is the man who wrote Jack London. They would pull out a copy of Jack London's book, you know what they call it in English? Call it a while. Well, Jack London was a pretty much leftist type of writer. People don't realize that, and they were highly regarded by the Russians. So that was, every day we would come to work, and we'd go through the maps, and I told you the story, and some of the maps we wanted, we felt that were important to us, and we would ask for them, and they would say, no, allies, you know. But we realized, didn't take very long to realize that these people didn't really think we were allies. And so that was what was going on then.
On the ship, you told me that you had newspapermen on the ship too. So
John Kenneth Galbraith was on there.
Yes.
And one of the big writers for the New York Times, Drew Middleton. I think Drew Middleton got into trouble because later he claimed that he wrote about Castro being a wonderful man for Cuba. He was, he wasn't a communist at all. He was just trying to get things straight, and he was proven wrong, so wrong. But and we had a lot of generals aboard. who were there to find out. For example, we found out by questioning that the Germans produced more fighter aircraft 1 month before the war ended than they did a year before, with all the bombings that we did. And one of our American generals broke down in tears. He said, "I sent boys out to die, and all they did, they weren't successful in all with the Germans, but the Germans didn't have the gasoline and didn't have the pilots, so they could produce all the planes they wanted. They couldn't fly them." What do you call it? So that was Flensburg. Many times in the evening, we would go. One of my jobs was to blow open safes in the German headquarters. And one of the safes we opened, and to my amazement, there was money from every country in the world in there, beautifully stacked. What do you call it? Many of the money, I didn't even know what country it came from. Couldn't read it. What do you call it? But there were a lot of American $50 bills. There were money all over the place. So my friend Alyoshin, my buddy, said to me, "Steinberg, you take all the money for yourself. Just give me the rubles. There's 230,000 rubles here." I said, "What are you going to do with 230,000 rubles?" "Geld ist Geld. Money is money," he said. "I built a little house in the country." What do you call it? I said, "We're going to get into trouble. They're looking to cause us trouble. This is a carbon copy with all the serial numbers of all the money." I said, "I'm not taking a chance." I said, "They'll send me to Leavenworth for 10 years. He said, "Leavenworth? What is Leavenworth?" So he said, "Well, in that case, I have to call my colonel." I said, "Okay, you call your colonel, I call my colonel." So the two colonels come and they look at Winnicott, and one turns to the other and he says, "You can keep everything in the safe, just give me the rubles." So my colonel said, "Absolutely not. Winnicott, this has to go back to Frankfurt. This is money." And so a high-ranking Russian general came, and he said, "This is money looted from the Soviet Union, and I demand in the name of Marshal Stalin that you turn over this money to us immediately." And we weren't worried about that. We said, "No, we represent General Eisenhower, and we're not going to turn any money over to you immediately." Then he got my general aside and said, "You keep everything, just give us the rule." That shows you what money was, what do you call it? So we then proceeded to put the money into footlockers. We put iron-bound things over them. I guarantee you, that money never got to Frankfurt.
On May 23rd,
Right.
1945,
Right.
you were assigned to help General Jodl pack his suitcase, and he was brought to the Patria.
Yes.
He was put under arrest.
Yeah.
At that time.
John Kenneth Galbraith, in his book, says it as follows. May I quote? "My note tells me with quite exceptional precision that on the morning of May 23rd, after the Speer interrogation was over, I got back to the Patria at 7:15 a.m. and slept for an hour. Then with Drew Middleton of the New York Times, I watched them on upper deck when Admiral Dönitz and Admiral von Friedeberg smartly came along the quay, saluted the flag, marched up the gangplank. The Third Reich at that moment finally came to an end. And then Admiral von Friedeberg, when he was told that he was under arrest again, he asked if he can go to the men's room, and they said okay, and he shot himself in the head with his gun. Yeah. So foolish man, he should never have done that, but he did. So this caused a pall, but absolute chaos in the place. All the reporters were there, and nobody could believe that the Reich had come to an end, and that these guys were all going to be tried as war criminals. And so we were all standing there listening and trying to make some sense out of it when I heard my name being called out. And my colonel was shouting at me, "Steinberg, you take Jodl, you take Jodl." Didn't tell me where to take him, what to do with him, or anything else. But he had told Jodl So we got into Yodel's car, and there's a picture of me in the paper of Yodel offering me to get into the car first, and I put my hand on my gun and said, "After you." So we went to his headquarters, and he was packing his bags, and he kept telling me, he said, "I don't know why I'm being tried." He said, I'm an officer doing my duty just as you were doing your duty right now." So I tried to tell him that he signed certain papers which were very incriminatory, He couldn't believe that. He was just following orders, So as we were walking out of the building, he said to me, "Can I go to the men's room?" I, being a gentleman, said, "Sure, go ahead." He wasn't out of my sight when I suddenly became almost immobile. What have I done? Von Friedeberg committed suicide when he asked to go to the bathroom. If he commits suicide, I'm finished. That's the end of my career, So I really was the scariest moment of my whole Army career. I rushed back into the latrine, and I broke open the door of the stores, and there he was, sitting on the can. He must have thought I was crazy. So that was that. Then, as we were walking out of the building, and that picture that I showed you before, there was a reporter there from the Associated Press who said to me, "Hey, Captain, you want to get your picture in the paper?" I said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Well, give me your name and address." And he wrote it down, the address, Staten Island, New York. And he said, "Okay." And I took this picture. And my mother was looking through the newspaper the day after or 2 days later. And there was my picture in the paper with her boy, who she didn't even know where I was. And with a picture of General Yodel, So anyway, as we were walking out, General Yodel turned to me and said in German, and I don't know why he did it, he said to me, "Hier ist der Schlüssel zu der Panzerschrank. Here's the key to the steel safe." And I was so nervous, and so, as you can see my face in that picture, I was, and I had my hand on my gun all the time, and I put the little key in my little vest pocket. You have a pocket down here, and I forgot about it entirely. And the next day, I was going through my pocket, I found this key. I said, "What did Yodel say to me? I don't remember." And I asked myself what he said to me, and then I remembered he said, "Here's the key to the steel safe." Well, there were steel safes all over the place. Each of the safes had these double doors, you open them up, and inside were boxes for keys. You ever see a safe like that? We have them here. You open the two steel doors, and then there were little compartments with boxes, And so we were going through all of these, and finally one day I turned the key one afternoon, and lo and behold, there were all the original orders signed by Hitler and Keitel and Yodel for the invasion of England, or for Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. And I couldn't understand, and I knew they were authentic because Hitler was very vain about his eyesight. So he had a typewriter made with the letters were 2 or 3 times bigger than a normal typewriter. And they call it the Führer Schreibmaschine, or the Führer's special typewriter. And many of these orders had the special typewriter type, So I went and took these orders and sent them to Nuremberg. And Yodel was convicted and hung because of some of the things he'd signed. You just can't sign papers, countersign,
And where did he stay in that period after you arrested him? He stayed on the Patria, or
No, he didn't stay. He stayed in a compound, the German officer compound.
Where other arrested officers were?
Yeah, they weren't arrested at that time. On the 23rd of June, they were all arrested.
And they went to Nuremberg that same day?
Yeah. I took him, put him in a car, picked up Admiral Dönitz, who was livid, absolutely livid. How could they do this to me? I'm the Führer of the Reich. Shut up, Pop. Get in the car. So we took him, that was a very, very interesting morning, and it was quite, quite amazing to me, finding these orders signed by all of them. And but of course they were duplicates. I mean, duplicate originals. But the originals were already in the hands of the Nuremberg prosecutors. What do you call it? So.
Did you have any further role to interrogate these individuals?
No. I did try. I was very much told that I was not to do anything which would in any way embarrass the American army. And they knew I was Jewish, and they were afraid I might say something or do something. And people ask me today, why didn't you take out your gun and shoot Yodel when you had a chance? Well, I couldn't do that. That was not our way of doing things, you know. So we were in a beautiful Mercedes convertible, taking him to the airport to get him for Nuremberg, and I was sitting in the back of the car when after we dropped him off, and suddenly I realized there's nobody around but the chauffeur, Sherman Corporal, driving the car. So when we went by a prisoner of war camp, I stopped him for a minute and I said, "Raus." Got rid of him, got behind the wheel, and drove off in Yodel's Mercedes-Benz convertible. I knew my general wouldn't let me keep that car. So I parked the car in front of our headquarters. I went upstairs to see the general, and I said to him, "General, I have a deal to make with you." We were very informal then, you know. He said, "What kind of a deal you got, Steinberg?" I said, "I've got General Yodel's Mercedes-Benz convertible downstairs. If you'll give me your Opel, I'll give you this car." What do you call it? He said, "Wonderful, wonderful. Let's go down and look at it." So we come down, no car. So I said to the corporal, the British corporal, "What happened to my car?" And he kicked his heels and said, "Stop!" You know the way they do, "Stop." I said, "What happened to my car?" He wouldn't answer. Finally, the general said to him, "Look, what happened to this car?" He said, "Oh, some British engineers came along, put a chain around the front, and towed it away." What do you call it? So the next day, I got the key to the car. I'm all over Flensburg looking for my convertible. I was trying to find it and drive it back again, but I never did find it. It was a lawless country then. Everything was absolutely lawless. I mean, whatever you had in your hand, you owned. So.
When you were with Yodel, how did you feel personally? I mean, could you distance yourself?
I was so nervous, personally, nervous. I was 22 years old, going to be 23. And here I am arresting a man who's been, you know, one of the principal architects of the Third Reich. And so I wasn't feeling any animosity at all. I was just feeling it'd be relief when I get rid of him and don't have to worry about what he called. That was my only view. And General Yodel did mention to me, he said, "Sie haben eine deutsche Waffe." I had a German gun in my holster. I couldn't use the .45 because it was so heavy I couldn't hit the side of a barn with it. So I got a German officer's gun, which was a Walter Parabellum 38. This was the standard issue for officers. Small little gun I put in the. And he laughed and he said, "German, I see you have a German weapon." I said, "Yeah." But he kept insisting to me, "I have done nothing wrong. I don't know why they're arresting me. I'm doing my duty just as you're doing your duty today." In other words, we're buddies. You are doing your duty and I was doing my duty. Well, what he forgot to say was he signed an order that all parachutists were to be shot on sight, what do you call it, without a trial, things of that sort, which got him hung. So,
Go ahead.
So after that, I wondered what to do, and I didn't have to wonder because they ordered me back to Frankfurt. So I got back to Frankfurt, and the IG Farben headquarters is amazing. Frankfurt was completely wrecked. There wasn't a building standing. But IG Farben headquarters, which was on the verge outside of town, was in perfect condition. I don't know how that came about, but there it was. So I reported there, and then the next thing I found out was that I was ordered, I was told I would become a courier officer, and I would drive from Frankfurt am Main to Berlin once a week. And when I got to Berlin, I was to go to a certain headquarters and give them my documents and get documents back. But in driving, the people learned that I was going to Berlin. They all brought their watches to me. Of course, a watch in Berlin, you could buy $500, $600, $700 a watch. I'm not talking about American money now. I'm talking about invasion money, which was good money for every purpose. And if you wanted to wait at the post office, you could buy a money order. But the line was 2 blocks long. So I hired a young man doing nothing, gave him 50% and told him whatever money orders you get 50%. Oh, it wasn't much. So anyway, I was in charge of going there to Berlin. And then, remember, there were no walls then. There was a boundary lines between sectors, the Russian sector, American sector, French sector, British sector. And in order to get into the Russian sector, you had to go through to a checkpoint called Helmstedt. So I used to drive to Helmstedt, and I'd show my papers to the Russian guards, and they would wave me through. So one day I'm in the Russian zone, and my Jeep breaks down. So I get out of the Jeep, and I'm standing there, and a Russian officer goes by, and he stops, and he orders his men to put a chain on my Jeep, and he drives me, takes me into we were allowed one repair station between Helmstedt and Berlin, and he drives me, takes me into the car, and he drops me off at the repair station, and he gives me a big salute. I give him a big salute. They're working on my Jeep when a master sergeant comes up to me, stripes up to here. He says, "Captain, can I see you for a moment in my squad room?" I said, "Why?" He says, "It'll be worth your while." And I said, "Well, okay." And I went in really with trepidation because I felt, it was so lawless that he could hit me on the head and that would be the end of it. So I walked into his squad room and he said, "When you get to Berlin, what do you do with your watches?" I said, I go to Alexanderplatz and I sell them to the Russian troops. They got more money than you know what to do with. They just gave it out like cigar coupons. So I'd sell the watches there, and then I would come and go back to Frankfurt. So he said to me, "How much you get for a watch there?" I said, "Oh, $500, $600, $700 a watch." However, if I had the Russians say, Mickey Mouse. For Mickey Mouse watch, they paid $900, for their kids. So he said, "Well, your worries are over." I said, "Oh, how are my worries over?" He said, "How many watches you got with you?" I said, "Oh, about 26. And my whole arm was full of watches. What do you go? So I get all the watches down. He said, "I'll give you $800 a watch." He said, "You couldn't do any better if you went all over Alexanderplatz because some are 500, 600. I said, "Okay." He goes to his bed and he pulls out a valise full of money, the invasion money. And he opens it up and he counts out for every watch $800 to $1,000 in what they call it. And he says, "Now remember, next time you come through, you stop here and you don't have to even go to Alexanderplatz," he said. "You just come to see me and I will take care of you and you'll be happy." I was expecting at the last moment he'd hit me on the head and that would be the end of my watches and my money. But it didn't work out that way. So I got out and I said to him, "By the way, Sergeant, tell me, how can you give me $800 a watch? And I can only get $800, maybe $800 in Berlin." "Oh," he says, "it's very simple, Captain." He said, "The Russians in this area, Berlin is off limits to them. They cannot go to Berlin. And so they'll pay any price that I ask for these watches." And so this This was the way we did Geschäft. I would come back and I would give out the money to the guys that gave me the watches. I take 10% for myself, of course, being a businessman. And that was that. But you have to understand, a carton of cigarettes for which we paid 8 cents a pack would sell for $100 a carton, $200 a carton. So
it's hard to believe.
Right.
That's hard to believe.
Right. And in Flensburg, I think I mentioned, we opened up one safe and there was coffee beans in little sacks, half-a-kilo sacks of a German general. And so we take one of these bags, a half a kilo, that's a pound and 2 ounces or so, and we go across to Denmark, which was right next door, and we go to Fredericia, which is a nice little town, and we bring in the coffee, and for that they would feed us until we couldn't eat anymore. What do you call it? Eggs and bacon and everything else that we wanted. So it shows you what happens when there's a shortage of things. And the necessities, cigarettes, coffee, cognac, things of that sort. What do you call it? So.
What about the population side? I mean, the German people must have suffered tremendously.
They did.
And especially in Frankfurt. What did you say?
I felt sorry for them, and yet when a German kid would come up to me and look at me with those sorrowful eyes, I would think of my children that I knew, and I would give them something. What do you call it? I just couldn't feel any terrible animosity toward German children, especially. What do you call it?
Did you have occasion to go to any of the liberated camps, the concentration camps?
I got into one camp and for a few hours, and that was Bergen-Belsen, which was in the British sector. And I have to admit to you that I was never very religious. I don't believe that the God of the Jews, and I'll say this openly for this regard, is a benevolent God or a God that looked after us, because when people in the camp prayed to God, they begged him, come, show yourself, do something for us, help us. Not a move. And so I just couldn't understand what we were talking about. Oh yes, the fact about the camps. I was just completely motivated again not to believe in God. As the God because if you read the scripture in Hebrew and you read this translation, it said our ever-loving God, our protector, who has his arms around us and does good things for us. Not true. Not true. So I said to a man like Martin Mermelstein, I said, Martin, you were in the camps. How can you be a devout Jew? Did you call for God to help you? You don't understand. You don't understand. It wasn't God's job to do that. This was done by human beings, and it's not God's job to do that. What do you call it? Free will. What do you call it? Another time he would say to me, the Jews deserve what they got because they were not observant enough. What do you call it? I mean, these ridiculous arguments. And so even to today, I have great problems with your mother, who I don't know why she is so devout in her own way. But she is devout, and I respect her for it. But she cannot abide my fact that I am not a believer in the same way she's a believer. I go to shul with her, I go to temple with her, but I am not and so when I'm coming now to the age when I'm going to pass away, and I'm not kidding myself because I'm going to be almost 90 already, I got to go, I tell her what I want done, and she just cannot understand that. I tell her I want to be cremated. I don't want to have any Jewish services. But how can you do that, she said. You know you're Jewish. I know I'm Jewish. I never denied I'm Jewish. And if push came to shove, I'd be the first one up on the front line, because I realize that Israel is the bulwark of democracy for Jews. Without Israel, we'd be nobody again. We'd be all over the world, subject to all the ills that can fall on us. And so But she is a very devout Jewish girl. And I told her, I insisted that, my daughter was the same way. I told her I want to be cremated. Oh, they both raised such objections to cremation. I said, first of all, there's nothing in the Torah which says you can't be cremated. I mean, there's nothing, not a word. What do you call it? I want to be cremated. Well, no, you can't do that. It's not nice. Not nice. Jewish people should not be cremated. Why shouldn't they be cremated? Because when the Messiah comes, all the Jews are going to rise up, what do you call it? And if you're cremated, you can't rise. You cannot rise up because you're ashes. Anyway, I have to admit to you, I'm not very religious, and I really have no. But what I do believe in, that when we prayed to God, and everybody prayed for God's help and assistance, and was no answer, then it behoove us to do what God did not do. And so, to the best of my ability, I look after the poor, I look after the homeless, I look after the people that are bereft of a family. I do everything I can to do what God did not do. That's all I can expect from me, and I do the best I can. And so that's the way it is there. I really shouldn't be saying this in front of God, but I feel very strongly. I feel
this if you want.
I feel very strongly about it, and but both of them finally agreed they're going to get me cremated. So we'll find out what happens there. Not that cremation is the answer to everything, but it's one answer. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with making the earth a better place, that's all. But Bible does say ashes to ashes and dust to dust, so you can't do any better than to get cremated. So when you talk to your mother, I say to you, she'll tell you what a terrible decision I made. So anyway. After Berlin, after the watch incident, I was ordered to Munich, which was desolate, completely, everything had been destroyed. But we found an area across the river that reminded me a lot of the fancy areas of Westchester County. Beautiful homes, nothing been touched. And so when we moved there, we had a Schaef mission, they called it, of about 15 or 20 officers. And we were told that we were going to be there for a few weeks. And so my colonel called me in and he said, Steinberg, go out and requisition one of those nice homes you saw out there. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to requisition a house, Go up there, knock on the door, and say, out, we're moving in. Well, it goes against my grain to do that. I mean, I'm an American, and I know what it must be like to be thrown out of your house. And I didn't say that to him. He said, it's very simple. You just go there, knock on the door, give him a half an hour to get rid of it. So I went around and I saw a nice house and I knocked on the door and the man answered. I said, I said, I'm Representative General Eisenhower. What do you call it? You got to get out. Why me? He's a Nazi. Down the street is a Nazi. Up there, the other one, he was a Nazi, but not me. As I said yesterday, I never met a Nazi. So he finally decided he had to leave, and he moved in with his brother-in-law across the way. I can even give you the address of the house that I took. It was called 79 Redwitzstrasse, and I'm sure it's still there today, although I wouldn't go near there. Anyway, when I got into the house and I started to look through his library books, I saw Thomas Mann and Lion Furchtwanger and all the German Jewish writers that hadn't been permitted to be, and of course he changed books and put them all in there to show me he was. I got up into the attic one day and I come across and I see a black uniform, SS uniform, and I looked at it and I realized this son of a bitch was lying to me. Where did this SS uniform come from? So I went across the way to his brother-in-law where he was staying, and I said to him, you lied to me. I said, what about this uniform? And he broke down in tears and said, that was my son. He was killed on the East Front. I didn't want to talk to you about him. But that's the way things, what do you call it? So after that, we, oh yes, and a very famous man down there was the geopolitician. Do you remember his name at all? General, anyway, he'd been teaching at the University of Munich for years and years. He was Hitler's geopolitician. And so he and his wife finally committed suicide. And why did they commit suicide? Because their son was involved in the 20th of July plot to kill Hitler and had been executed by the Nazis. And so they decided that they would, So that was Munich. And then one day I was ordered back to Berlin. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, if I stay here much longer, I'm going to become a drunken bum. And my life means too much to me, what do you call it? It's nice living here and it's nice to having all the nice things that you want, but not for me. So I asked for leave to go home. They gave me rest and recuperation leave, thinking I was coming back, but I never came back. And that's when I then found out that there was an opening at Columbia Law School, and on the GI Bill I put in for that. And look to my surprise, I'm always surprised when I win something. I was admitted to the class of June '48.
So I want to ask one more question, and we're going to take a short break. You talked about God, and you talked about what you saw, and how maybe God didn't answer people that were asking for His help at the time of something so terrible. But do you think, when it comes to war, is there a place for war? Ought there to be that sort of an act that people have the right or the intent, a reason to do in the circumstance of such evil? Should there be war? Are there times when war is necessary, or is there something we should have learned that there should never be a war on this?
I don't believe in war. Sometimes my better judgment says, well, why don't we really destroy them? What do you call it? But in the long run, it won't help. So I don't believe in war, and I don't believe it solves any problems. One thing more I will say to you. I got to the bunker where Hitler had committed suicide, and I was standing at the steps of the bunker, and I was of two thoughts. One was, how did they destroy 6 million fellow Jews that I'm not a believer, but there were 6 million Jews. I would have been one of the 6 million. They didn't want to know if I'm a devout Jew or not a devout Jew. I said, these are the same people that killed all these people, homosexuals, gypsies. Everybody they didn't like got killed. I was really upset and on the verge of tears. And then I said to myself, you know, this is the end of evil. We were the good ones. We fought evil to the very end, and we've defeated evil, and evil is gone now. And how wrong I was, because evil was there all the time, will always be there, and we must be vigilant to fight against evil. I don't mean fight physically, but we have to fight in every way we can, not to forget the fact that evil is always there. And so I stood there on the steps of the bunker, and I was almost in tears when I thought about all the people that had been killed because of this madman in the bunker. And I also felt relieved that good had won over evil. And I was convinced there was no more evil. But boy, was I wrong.
Let's take a short break.
Okay.
I'd like to see that. When you sang at the opera. Okay,
We're live. We're live. We're good. We have 15 minutes on this tape.
Okay.
You had come back. You couldn't continue that life.
No.
You took your test. To your surprise, you were accepted on the GI Bill to enter Columbia Law School.
Right. That's true. And in 2 years, I graduated from Columbia Law School. It was a 2-year course then because we went 3 semesters a year instead of 2 semesters. That's one of the dispensations they gave to veterans. And we had a wonderful class of people in my class. That's why I was surprised I got in, because they had a choice of the top people. If you've seen, we had classmates like Bouvier Beale. If you've seen Grey Gardens, you'll know his aunts, what do you call it. We had a wonderful class. I often wondered how they did so well. They played bridge all day, and they got better grades than I did. But I met, as I told you, I think before, one of my classmates at Columbia had me up to his house, and I used to go there to eat my full of lobster and steak and everything else, his mother. And I met his sister, who, as I said, had graduated from Vassar College the year before, 2 years before. And we had a nice relationship. And then we decided to get married, and we did. And we were married for about 25 years, 23 years. We had 2 children, my daughter, Eve, and my son, Jim. I now have my daughter Eve and my son Jim, and I have 4 grandchildren. 2 boys of my sons and a boy and a girl of my daughter, who lives here in Potomac, Maryland. I then began to practice law, which I never really liked that much, but one had to earn a living, so I practiced law. And one of my clients was a store which had branches all over the city, which was the most outrageous, but they've had the most up-to-date designer clothing. They had Issey Miyake, they had Yohji Yamamoto, Dolce & Gabbana, all of the famous names. And the name of the firm was Charivari, Charivari. They had a beautiful store on 57th Street and a couple of stores on the west side. But the advantage of being attorney for that company was that I would be able to go to Europe when they went on the buying trips to see the shows. And so instead of living at a 2-star hotel, I was staying at the Ritz Hotel and eating at the best restaurant in the Ritz. And it was quite, and then of course in Milano, we stayed at the Ritz in Milano, or the Palace in Milano, and it was just, it was a great way for me to get around, and the company was paying for it, so I really was not, but then after a while, when I got divorced, things were not going well with the company then. And the owner of the company was a girl I knew when she was a teenager in Staten Island. And her name was Selma Weiser. And she was the president and CEO of this company. And I got to know her even better. And then when things got really bad, as the attorney, I suggested to her, it would be much simpler if we were married, because you could protect yourself. You can give me anything you wanted tax-free, and you know me well enough, I will return it to you when when things have quieted down, and in that way you can avoid your creditors. So, and she liked the idea. Her children thought it was a terrible idea. She had 2 children, one was gay and one never married, a girl. Anyway, we decided that it would be best if we got married, and we did it in a nice way, and we did. And it was strictly a commercial idea, nothing to do with great love or affection, but we liked each other and it was good. And so we got married in Bellport, Long Island, and my best man, or one of the men who signed my certificate, was Abe Rosenthal, the editor of the New York Times, and people like that. And it was, he loved to talk to me because he went to City College, and he loved to talk Yiddish. He was married to a blonde bombshell. And every time he came to talk to me, she'd say, "Hey, don't talk to him that long." So anyway, we became good friends. And then when things began to clarify itself and the children gave me such a hard time, and she was out of danger by that time, I said, "I don't need this. I'm leaving." And my daughter said to me, "Dad, why don't you move down to where we live in Potomac?" And so she found this beautiful apartment for me overlooking the city. And I moved down to Washington, D.C. And I was very fortunate because Bethesda Naval Hospital was in a stone's throw. The pharmacy for the Naval Hospital was in a stone's throw. And being a retired officer, I was entitled to all the benefits without paying a penny. So I get all my drugs for nothing at Bethesda Naval Hospital. And I'm very pleased that I moved down here. And my daughter has been most helpful. My son-in-law is the most wonderful man in the world, Nate Wallace. And I'm very fortunate in that regard. My son lives up in upstate near Poughkeepsie. No, not near Poughkeepsie. He lives in, Westchester County. And, but his wife came from Canada. Really a terrible, terrible place. I mentioned it to Iris the other day, and she said, "Oh my God, what a terrible place that is." I said, "You're right." So then I practiced law, and I had some very interesting lawsuits because I wasn't consent. I had the retainer from the corporation, and I had a builder who I represented, who was making deals all the time, building truck terminals for interstate shippers, like Schuster's Express, Pacific and the Mountain Express. And so I got to know a lot of these people, was making decent money from them. And then I found that I could pick my clients that I wanted. And so I had some very interesting clients. I had a client I represented a company called St. Organ, one of the oldest organ companies in the United States. And this was a German man. And he was notified by the government that he'd gotten in illegally, that he was a Nazi, and that they were going to deport him. And he came to see me, and I said, "Well, why don't you get yourself another lawyer? Why do you want me?" "Well, I have great faith in you, Sherman, and I want you to represent me." So I felt, well, he's entitled. He said, "This is not me. I wasn't this man at all." So I represented him, and I was wrong. I was wrong about one thing. He was the man that they said he was, that the government said he was, but whether he was a Nazi or not, I'll never find out. But things got very, very hairy for me there because the government produced documents signed by a man named, what was his name that he used? Hans-Heinz Hanko was the name the Germans said he was. And he said his name was Henry Hancock. So it turned out that Henry Hancock's birthday on these documents was the same birthday as my client. And Henry Hancock's wife, whose name was the same as on the documents, her date of birth was the same. I said, Henry, how do you account for this? He said, absolute coincidence. There's no truth to this whatsoever. So the United States Attorney got a hold of me, and he said, you know, you'd do wise if you dropped this case, and told him to get another lawyer. Before I could do this, Henry went to the judge and said, you know, my name was Hans-Heinz Hanko, but I'm not a Nazi. I was, what do you call it? But Mr. Steinberg told me that if I told anybody I was Hans-Heinz Hanko, that would ruin my case and I would be deported. So he made me lie. So the judge called me in and he said to me, you know, your client has said that you're responsible for his present condition, and I think it'd be best if you resigned from the case. I said, I do. I resigned from the case immediately. I was happy to note that 2 years later, Henry Hancock was arrested for mail fraud and spent 2 years in jail. But it was clients like that. And then I had some very interesting matrimonial cases, really, that kept me going. One was a woman who married one of the founders of Revlon. And, but that's a long, long story. And then I had another woman who was I can't describe her anyway. She was a woman who used the name Churchill, as if you were a member of the Churchill family. And she got herself into big trouble and tried to commit suicide. And they called me from the hotel. And, but those were some of the cases I held. And then I was always going to Washington for a couple of months' duty down in the Pentagon, because I loved that work, that type of work. So in the Korean War, I wasn't called up for active duty. I was called to. I never left the country, but I worked on the Korean War for the invasion of Incheon, and then when the war in Vietnam came along, I was really a little too old to be sent over there with the combat troops, so they asked me if I would write a report for them on certain aspects of intelligence. And I said, I know a guy who's much more able to do this than I, and I told him who he was, and they sent him over instead of me. So I never got to NAM for that reason. So that was my story. At the end, I was deputy commander of an intelligence unit. My group was called Seat of Government Detachment, and we had units all over the United States. We had one in Anchorage, Alaska, San Antonio, Texas, San Francisco, a few other places, and it was highly very rewarding to me to see how things went there. And I retired from that, and then I retired for good from the Army. And so I've now retired, living the life of a country gentleman. And that's my story. I've done.
It's a beautiful story.
I've done to make it as interesting as possible, but I can tell you one thing. Not one word of what I said is a lie. Everything I said is true, and I say it again, all truth. And I was just very lucky. I was at the right place at the right time, and things just worked for my benefit. He asked me sometimes, did I have a German girlfriend? No, I didn't. I had German girls, but no girlfriend. I stuck to British girls who were in the ATS, or the Army Territorial Service.
In France?
Yeah.
And in France?
The same way. I had met British girls working over there.
Oh, okay.
And in France, I had nothing. Oh, yeah, I did.
You said this was the truth.
No, that was an omission. That wasn't a lie. That was an omission. But
Okay. I'm going to try and put in another tape because I have some questions I really have to ask.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we were finished.
Some things we didn't get to.
Oh,
I hope we have. We can
okay.
get them on there. 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry. So tell me, what was the happiest moment of your life?
That's a difficult question to answer because there are a couple of incidents which were the happiest. But I'll tell you the two that struck me most. The most happiest moment of my life is when I arrived home from Europe. My folks lived in Staten Island. I got off the ferry boat in Staten Island, and there was my father waiting for me. He was 5'2", all muscle. He'd been a baker all his life and worked very hard. And he ran out to greet me and rushed into my arms and put his arms around me. And this was a really great moment of my life to see him. And he was so glad to see me alive. Of course, he knew where I was because that picture of General Yodel and myself was in the newspapers, and my mother was besieged with telephone calls about that. What was another happiest moment of my life? I must admit, it'll sound very chauvinistic, if you want to call it that, but when I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army, I was exuberant. That was, to me, what I'd always dreamed of. And that's it. That was a very cool.
When Benjamin's old enough to travel, where should he go first outside the United States?
I think one of the first places he has to visit is England. There's so much to be learned from our English cousins. And if he's old enough to travel, he will have known about our revolution, and he will have known about what the British stood for and what we stood for. And I feel very, very strongly that he should go, first of all, go to Britain. And then after Britain, I think he should go to Italy, but that's...
And is your life different from what you'd imagined, sir?
100% different.
100% different.
I had anticipated that when I got out of college, I'd become a school